Are you brave enough to let go of everything you think you need in order to become everything you are capable of becoming? Most people never ask this question because it threatens the structure of their identity. They live gripping tightly to outcomes, to approval, to comfort, to control. They believe attachment is strength. They believe caring deeply means holding tightly. They believe ambition requires obsession. But this belief quietly destroys their potential. It fragments their focus. It enslaves their emotions. It turns their mind into a battlefield they cannot command. Detachment is not weakness. Detachment is the highest form of power, and if you misunderstand it, you will fear it. If you understand it fully, you will become dangerous in the most disciplined sense of the word. This is not about escaping life. This is not about becoming numb or indifferent or cold for the sake of coldness. This is about reclaiming sovereignty over your inner world. This is about removing the invisible chains that bind your performance to circumstances beyond your control. This is about learning to act with precision while remaining untouched by chaos. This is the philosophy of inner mastery. This is the strategy of those who operate at full potential while others drown in emotional noise. Epictetus taught that human suffering does not come from events themselves, but from the judgments we attach to them. This is not poetic language. This is operational truth. The moment you attach your inner state to something external, you surrender command. The moment your peace depends on results you do not fully control, you have already lost. Detachment is the act of taking your power back. It is the conscious decision to separate what you do from what you are owed, to separate effort from reward, to separate intention from outcome, to separate your worth from the opinions of others. Look closely at your own life. Notice how much energy is wasted on anticipation and fear. Notice how much of your mental space is occupied by things that have not happened or may never happen. Notice how often your performance collapses, not because you lack ability, but because you are emotionally invested in winning approval, avoiding rejection, or protecting an image. Attachment turns every action into a gamble. Detachment turns action into execution. The detached mind does not hesitate. It does not overthink. It does not plead with the future. It does not beg reality to cooperate. It acts according to principle. It executes according to reason. It accepts results without collapse. This is why detachment unlocks full potential, because potential is not unlocked by desire. It is unlocked by clarity, and clarity only exists when the mind is free from emotional dependence. Most people think they are attached to success. In reality, they are attached to validation. They do not want mastery. They want recognition. They do not want excellence. They want reassurance. This attachment creates fear, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of loss, and fear narrows perception. It constricts decision-making. It weakens resolve. A mind ruled by fear cannot reach its limits because it will retreat long before the body is exhausted. Detachment removes fear by removing false ownership. You were never promised success. You were never promised fairness. You were never promised applause. You were given a mind capable of reason and a will capable of choice. That is all. Everything else is borrowed. Reputation is borrowed. Circumstances are borrowed. Outcomes are borrowed. Detachment begins when you stop treating borrowed things as if they define you. This is where the dark clarity begins, when you accept that nothing external belongs to you. Not praise, not results, not comfort, not even the continuation of your current situation. When you accept this fully, you stop negotiating with reality, you stop resisting what is, you stop demanding guarantees, and something strange happens. Your actions become sharper, your focus deepens, your energy consolidates, because you are no longer leaking power into hope or fear. A detached person can work harder than anyone else because they are not emotionally exhausted by expectation. They can take risks without paralysis, because their identity is not tied to the outcome. They can endure hardship without self-pity, because they are not comparing reality to fantasy. Detachment creates endurance. It creates resilience. It creates calm aggression, the kind of aggression that does not need to announce itself. Epictetus was born a slave. He understood power in its rawest form. He knew that chains on the body were nothing compared to chains on the mind. He watched free men panic over insults, while enslaved men endured pain with dignity. He learned early that the only thing no one could take from you was your faculty of choice. Detachment is the practice of protecting that faculty at all costs. When you attach your happiness to achievement, you become frantic. When you detach your happiness from achievement, you become effective. This does not make you lazy, it makes you lethal, because now you act from discipline, not from craving. You work because it is right to work. You improve because it is right to improve. You persist because persistence is aligned with your character, not because you need something to happen to feel whole. This is the mistake most people make. They think detachment kills ambition. In reality, attachment poisons ambition. It turns ambition into anxiety. Detachment purifies ambition. It strips it down to its core. The desire to act in accordance with reason and virtue, to test oneself against difficulty, to refine skill, to sharpen judgment, to live deliberately rather than react. A detached mind is not passive, it is selective. It chooses where to invest effort and where to withdraw emotion. It understands that emotion is a resource, and like any resource it must be allocated strategically. If you burn emotional energy on things you cannot control, you will have none left for things you can. Detachment is not about feeling nothing. It is about feeling only what serves your purpose. Observe how easily people are manipulated through attachment. Praise controls them. Criticism destabilizes them. Loss breaks them. Gain intoxicates them. Their behavior swings wildly because their inner state is tethered to externals. The detached individual cannot be easily controlled. You cannot threaten them with loss they have already accepted. You cannot seduce them with praise they do not need. You cannot distract them with noise because their attention is governed by principle. This is why detachment feels dangerous to the uninitiated, because it removes leverage, it removes hooks, it removes emotional entry points. But this danger is internal. It is the danger of becoming ungovernable from within, of no longer being a hostage to impulse or expectation. Detachment begins with a ruthless inventory of what is and is not within your control. Not intellectually, practically. The thoughts you entertain are within your control. The effort you apply is within your control. The standards you hold yourself to are within your control. The outcome is not. The response of others is not. The timing of results is not. The fairness of circumstances is not. Every time you emotionally react to something outside your control, you are practicing attachment. Every time you calmly return focus to what you can influence, you are practicing detachment. This is not a single decision, it is a daily discipline, a moment-to-moment correction, a mental posture. The world rewards those who can remain composed under pressure, not because composure is impressive, but because composure preserves cognitive function. Panic destroys intelligence. Anger distorts judgment. Obsession narrows vision. Detachment keeps the mind wide. It allows you to see options others miss, to endure discomfort others avoid, to wait while others rush, to move when others freeze. Think of the moments you have failed to perform at your best. How often was it due to lack of skill, and how often was it due to emotional interference? Overthinking, fear of judgment, desire for validation. These are symptoms of attachment. The mind becomes crowded. Execution slows. Errors multiply. Detachment clears the stage. It creates silence inside. And in that silence you can hear reason again. You can sense timing. You can act decisively. You are no longer arguing with yourself. You are no longer seeking permission from the future. You are simply doing what must be done. This is the first truth you must accept if you want to use detachment for full potential. You will be misunderstood. People will project coldness onto you. They will mistake calm for indifference. They will mistake restraint for lack of passion. This is the price of inner freedom, and it is a price worth paying, because the alternative is emotional slavery disguised as sensitivity. Detachment does not remove compassion, it removes dependency. You can care without clinging. You can love without losing yourself. You can commit without becoming brittle. In fact, detachment allows deeper commitment because it is no longer driven by fear of loss. It is driven by choice. At this stage, most people resist. They say this feels inhuman. They say this feels too harsh. What they are really saying is that they are addicted to emotional stimulation. Chaos has become familiar. Suffering has become identity. Detachment threatens that identity. It asks, who are you without your emotional reactions? Who are you without your stories of injustice and longing? This is why detachment is rare, not because it is complex, but because it requires letting go of psychological comfort. It requires standing alone with your own discipline. It requires accepting that no one is coming to save you from your own mind. But once you begin to practice it, something shifts. You feel lighter. Decisions become simpler. You stop rehearsing conversations that will never happen. You stop chasing emotional highs. You stop fearing emotional lows. You become steady, and steadiness is the foundation of power. This is only the beginning. Detachment is not an endpoint. It is the ground on which full potential is built. Without it, every skill collapses under pressure. Every ambition becomes fragile. Every plan becomes hostage to emotion. If you are willing to continue, if you are willing to strip away illusions and confront the discipline required, then you are ready to go deeper. Detachment deepens when you realize it is not merely a mental technique, but a complete reorientation of how you relate to reality. It is not something you switch on when things get difficult. It is a posture you carry into every moment. Most people attempt detachment only after they are already overwhelmed. They wait until the storm hits before trying to steady the ship. By then, the waves have already breached the deck. True detachment is built in calm, so it holds under pressure. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. This is not a metaphor. It is an observation of human psychology. The mind rehearses pain far more vividly than it ever experiences it. Attachment fuels this rehearsal. When you attach to outcomes, the future becomes a threat. Every unknown becomes a danger. Every delay becomes an insult. You begin living in anticipation of loss rather than presence of action. Detachment collapses this imaginary suffering. It brings the mind back to what exists now and only now. This is where potential begins to surface. Potential is not a reservoir of talent waiting to be unlocked by motivation. It is the ability to apply yourself fully without internal resistance. Resistance is created by attachment. You want certainty before effort. You want reassurance before risk. You want comfort before commitment. Detachment removes these conditions. It allows action without guarantees, and action without guarantees is where growth lives. The detached individual understands something most never grasp. Effort is the only thing that belongs to you. Everything else is a variable. When you accept this completely, you stop bargaining with fate. You stop asking whether it will be worth it. You stop calculating emotional return on investment. You act because action is your responsibility, not because success is assured. This creates a strange, calm intensity. You work with seriousness but without desperation. You pursue goals without begging them to validate you. You can walk away from what no longer aligns without resentment. You can endure what must be endured without drama. This is not apathy. This is clarity stripped of illusion. Consider how much of your energy is spent reacting to opinions, reacting to setbacks, reacting to comparisons. Reaction is the reflex of attachment. When something touches your ego, you flinch. When something threatens your image, you defend. When something delays your reward, you panic. Detachment slows this reflex. It inserts a pause, and in that pause you regain choice. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside events. This is not inspiratio. Now writing. This is tactical instruction. The moment you try to control what is not yours to command, you create friction. Friction breeds frustration. Frustration breeds exhaustion. Exhaustion kills potential. Detachment removes friction by aligning your expectations with reality. Reality is indifferent. It does not care about your plans. It does not adjust itself to your desires. It responds only to consistent, intelligent effort over time. The detached person understands this and stops taking reality personally. They stop interpreting obstacles as insults. They stop reading meaning into delays. They see events as neutral data, information to be processed, not emotions to be indulged. This emotional neutrality is often misunderstood. People think it means suppressing feeling. It does not. It means refusing to let feeling dictate behavior. You can feel disappointment without collapsing. You can feel desire without becoming enslaved. You can feel fear without obeying it. Detachment is the separation of sensation from command. When you master this separation, you gain strategic depth. You can observe yourself in motion. You can notice when attachment is creeping in, the tightening in the chest, the urgency in the thoughts, the hunger for reassurance, and instead of feeding it, you step back. You remind yourself that nothing external can add to or subtract from your capacity to act well. This is where discipline is born. Discipline is not brute force willpower, it is alignment. When your inner state is no longer hijacked by externals, discipline becomes natural. You do not need motivation because you are not negotiating with emotion. You do what must be done because it is within your control to do it. Most people exhaust themselves trying to feel ready. They wait for confidence. They wait for certainty. They wait for the right emotional state. This waiting is attachment disguised as preparation. Detachment ends the waiting. It says act first, adjust later. Act because action itself is the training ground. There is a dark comfort in detachment that few speak about. When you accept that outcomes are not yours to command, you also accept that failure is not a verdict on your worth. This frees you to experiment, to push limits, to risk exposure, to step into arenas where attachment would paralyze you. Detachment creates courage by removing the fear of identity damage. This is why the detached individual often outpaces the talented but attached. Talent without detachment is brittle. It collapses under scrutiny. It demands perfect conditions. Detachment creates durability. It allows imperfect action. It allows learning through friction. It allows sustained effort long after novelty fades. Look at how attachment distorts time perception. When you are attached, you rush. You want results now because your emotional relief depends on them. This rushing leads to mistakes, to shallow work, to burnout. Detachment stretches time. It allows patience. It allows long games. It allows mastery because you are no longer feeding an emotional clock. Seneca advised treating success and failure as guests who come and go. Neither should be allowed to stay too long. Attachment invites them to move in permanently. Detachment lets them pass through without rearranging your inner furniture. You acknowledge the event, then return to your principles. Principles are the anchor. When you detach from outcomes, you must attach to something else. That something is character, standards, values, a code. Without this, detachment becomes emptiness. With it, detachment becomes strength. You measure yourself not by applause but by adherence to your own rules. This internal code is what allows consistency. When motivation fluctuates, you remain steady. When conditions worsen, you remain deliberate. When others panic, you remain observant. This steadiness compounds. Over time, it separates you from the reactive masses. Detachment also sharpens perception of others. When you are not emotionally entangled, you can see manipulation clearly. You can see insecurity masquerading as aggression. You can see praise as a tool, criticism as projection. This does not make you cynical. It makes you precise. Precision is the hallmark of high performance. Knowing where to place effort, knowing when to withdraw, knowing what deserves emotion and what does not. Attachment blurs these distinctions. Everything feels urgent, everything feels personal. Detachment restores hierarchy. Things matter. Most do not. There will be moments when detachment feels lonely, when you realize how much of human interaction is built on shared emotional chaos, complaining, worrying, obsessing. When you no longer participate, you may feel isolated. This is the cost of clarity, but this isolation is temporary. What replaces it is self-trust. Self-trust is the quiet confidence that you can face whatever comes without losing yourself, that you can adapt without breaking, that you can act without applause. This trust cannot be given by others. It can only be built through repeated acts of detached discipline. The more you practice detachment, the more you notice its absence in others. You will see how easily they are thrown off balance, how small events derail them, how quickly they surrender agency. This observation should not breed arrogance. It should reinforce your commitment, because the alternative is to return to the same emotional volatility. Detachment is not about becoming invulnerable. Pain will still arrive, loss will still occur, but you will meet them differently, without amplification, without narrative, without self-betrayal. You will feel pain as pain, not as proof of failure. You will grieve without collapsing your entire identity. This capacity to absorb impact without fragmentation is what allows sustained pursuit of potential. Many people start strong. Few endure. Endurance is built on detachment, on the refusal to let transient states dictate long-term direction. You must understand this clearly. Detachment is not optional if you want full potential. It is foundational. Without it, your mind will sabotage you at every threshold. At every moment where growth requires discomfort, attachment will pull you back toward familiarity. This is why the practice must be deliberate, daily, relentless. You must catch yourself when you cling, when you demand outcomes, when you seek emotional payoff, and you must release, again and again, until release becomes instinct. The mind will resist. It will argue that this is too extreme, too cold, too inhuman. This is the voice of attachment defending its territory. Do not debate it, observe it, let it pass, return to action. As this discipline strengthens, you will notice something subtle but profound. Your energy will stop leaking. You will feel less drained at the end of effort, less reactive to noise, less dependent on circumstances. This conserved energy fuels deeper work, harder work, work others cannot sustain. Detachment is not the absence of desire, it is the discipline of desire. It channels intensity without allowing it to burn uncontrolled. It creates a controlled fire, one that warms rather than consumes. You are not detaching to escape life. You are detaching to engage with it fully, without distortion, without fear, without self-imposed limits. And, as this understanding settles, the next layer emerges. Detachment not only changes how you act, it changes how you choose. And that is where true potential begins to take shape. Detachment reaches its most dangerous form when it begins to shape your decisions before emotion has a chance to interfere. This is where it stops being a philosophy and becomes a weapon of clarity. Most people decide emotionally and justify intellectually. They feel first, then scramble for reasons. Detachment reverses this order. You decide according to principle, then allow emotion to follow if it must. This single inversion separates those who drift through life from those who carve through it deliberately. The mind attached to comfort will always choose the familiar. The mind attached to approval will always choose what looks good. The mind attached to outcomes will always choose what feels safe. Detachment dissolves these hidden loyalties. It exposes the real question beneath every choice. What aligns with reason? What strengthens character? What expands capacity? When these become the metrics, decision-making becomes brutally simple. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he could leave life at any moment. This was not morbidity, it was strategic detachment. By remembering impermanence, he stripped decisions of false urgency and false fear. If this were your last chance to act with integrity, would you still hesitate? If this were your last opportunity to train your mind, would you still waste it on resentment? Detachment from permanence sharpens commitment to action. Most people cling to options. They keep doors open out of fear. Fear of regret, fear of missing out, fear of choosing wrong. This attachment to possibility is paralysis disguised as flexibility. Detachment allows you to close doors cleanly, to commit fully, to accept the cost of choice without second-guessing. Full potential requires depth, not breadth, and depth demands detachment from endless alternatives. When you are detached from being right, you can learn faster. When you are detached from appearing competent, you can practice honestly. When you are detached from protecting ego, you can accept feedback without distortion. Attachment makes every mistake an attack. Detachment makes every mistake information. Information accelerates growth. Defensiveness halts it. There is a ruthless efficiency that emerges when you no longer need to defend an image. You stop curating yourself for others. You stop explaining your process. You stop seeking validation mid-effort. This silence is powerful. It allows concentration to deepen. It allows momentum to build uninterrupted. Detachment also transforms how you relate to struggle. Struggle no longer feels like resistance from the universe. It feels like the natural friction of progress. You stop asking why this is happening to you. You start asking how to use it. This shift is subtle but decisive. Victimhood evaporates. Agency returns. Epictetus taught that it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. When you detach from judgment, you reclaim peace without sacrificing performance. You can acknowledge difficulty without dramatizing it. You can register pain without interpreting it as injustice. This neutrality preserves strength. Strength is not loud. It is quiet and continuous. It does not announce itself. It does not require witnesses. It endures. Detachment feeds this endurance by reducing internal conflict. When your mind is no longer split between desire and fear, energy flows cleanly toward execution. Consider how attachment fragments attention. You are thinking about results while acting, thinking about others while training, thinking about reward while learning. This divided focus weakens output. Detachment reunites attention. You do the task fully. Nothing else competes for cognitive space. This is why detached effort often feels almost meditative. Time stretches, awareness sharpens, output improves. There is a misconception that detachment makes life dull. In reality, it removes artificial drama so real intensity can emerge. The intensity of mastery, the intensity of disciplined pursuit, the intensity of facing limits honestly. Emotional theatrics fade, purpose remains. Detachment also protects you from burnout. Burnout is not caused by effort, it is caused by emotional overinvestment in uncontrollable factors. When your sense of worth rises and falls with results, you exhaust yourself. Detachment stabilizes self-assessment. You evaluate performance rationally. You adjust without self-punishment. This sustainability is rare and powerful. You begin to notice that others mistake your calm for lack of ambition. They assume intensity must be loud. They confuse obsession with commitment. You do not correct them. Detachment includes detachment from being understood. You let results speak over time. As detachment matures, it starts influencing your environment. People sense when you cannot be easily swayed. Conversations change. Manipulation attempts lose traction. You are treated with a different kind of respect, not admiration, recognition of steadiness. Steadiness is intimidating in a reactive world. It exposes volatility in others. It highlights how much energy they waste on emotion. This may provoke resistance. Some will attempt to pull you back into chaos, to provoke reaction, to test your attachment. This is where practice matters. You respond with composure, not withdrawal, not aggression, calm presence. Detachment also sharpens moral clarity. When you are not chasing approval, you can act ethically even when it costs you. You can say no without guilt. You can stand alone without resentment. This integrity compounds into self-respect. And self-respect is a powerful stabilizer. Self-respect anchored in detachment is unshakable. It does not depend on praise. It does not collapse under criticism. It is built on internal consistency. You do what you believe is right. You accept consequences. You move forward. Many people fear detachment because they believe it will isolate them. In truth, it filters relationships. Superficial bonds dissolve, meaningful ones deepen. You connect without dependency. You share without neediness. This creates cleaner interactions. As you detach from emotional reactivity, you gain access to strategic patience. You can wait without anxiety. You can observe without restlessness. You can plan without urgency. This patience allows you to choose better moments, better moves, better paths. Patience is not passivity, it is controlled readiness. Attachment rushes you into premature action. Detachment allows timing to mature. You strike when alignment appears, not when emotion demands release. This controlled timing is evident in all high-level performance. Athletes who peak under pressure, leaders who speak sparingly but decisively, artists who labor unseen then release with precision. Detachment underlies all of it. You begin to trust process over outcome, not blindly. Rationally, you refine inputs, you evaluate feedback, you adjust course, but you do not emotionally cling to milestones. You let progress unfold. This trust removes desperation. Desperation distorts behavior. It causes shortcuts, compromises, overreaching. Detachment eliminates desperation by removing the belief that your worth is on the line. At this stage, detachment becomes identity, not as a label but as a lived posture. You are no longer trying to be detached. You simply are. You notice attachment when it arises and release it without drama. This does not mean you no longer feel ambition. It means ambition is no longer frantic. It is steady, directed, sustainable. It does not burn you out. It builds you up. The more this posture settles, the clearer your path becomes. Noise fades. Distractions lose appeal. You stop chasing stimulation. You start choosing depth. Depth is where full potential hides. Not in constant motion, not in scattered effort, in sustained engagement with difficulty. And as you step into this depth, another realization emerges. Detachment does not remove responsibility, it intensifies it. Because when excuses dissolve, only choice remains. This is where the work becomes serious. Responsibility is the weight most people try to escape, and detachment forces you to carry it fully. When you can no longer blame circumstances, outcomes, or other people, you are left alone with your choices. This is uncomfortable. It strips away the psychological shelter of excuses. But this discomfort is the doorway to real power, because responsibility accepted completely becomes agency without dilution. Most people secretly believe they are special cases, that their suffering excuses their inconsistency, that their past entitles them to hesitation. Attachment feeds this belief. It wraps identity around struggle and calls it depth. Detachment exposes it as avoidance. When you detach from the story you tell about yourself, you confront the raw fact of what you do each day, and that confrontation is unforgiving. Seneca wrote that we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than reality. Responsibility collapses imagined barriers. When you stop indulging the narrative of difficulty, the path becomes brutally clear. Not easy, clear. There is work to do. There is discipline required. There is no mystery left to hide behind. This clarity can feel oppressive at first. Without emotional noise, there is nowhere to escape. You cannot distract yourself with outrage or fantasy. You cannot dissolve discomfort into drama. You are face to face with effort, and effort demands consistency. This is where many retreat, not because the work is impossible, but because it is plain. Plain work lacks spectacle. It offers no immediate reward. It does not validate identity. Attachment despises plain work because it wants intensity without endurance. Detachment embraces plain work because it understands compounding. Compounding is invisible to the attached mind. They need feedback now. They need affirmation now. They need proof now. Detachment allows you to operate in silence, to trust that disciplined input accumulates even when no one is watching. This trust is not faith, it is observation of reality. When you detach from external markers of progress, you can focus on internal markers: quality of attention, consistency of effort, precision of execution. These are within your control. Improvement here guarantees long-term results regardless of short-term noise. Responsibility also changes how you view OBS. Tackles. Instead of asking why something blocks you, you ask what it demands from you. More patience, more skill, more resilience. This reframing transforms frustration into instruction. Every obstacle becomes a teacher, not a verdict. Marcus Aurelius saw obstacles as fuel. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not motivational phrasing, it is operational logic. Resistance reveals where growth is required. Detachment allows you to receive this message without emotional distortion. Emotional distortion is costly. It leads to overreaction, underreaction, avoidance, escalation. Detachment flattens these extremes. It allows proportional response, appropriate force, correct timing. When you are responsible without attachment, you stop waiting for permission. You do not need circumstances to align perfectly. You do not need emotional readiness. You act from principle. This autonomy accelerates development. Autonomy is frightening because it removes alibis. When results are poor, you cannot hide. When effort is lacking, you cannot blame mood. When discipline falters, you cannot cite unfairness. Detachment exposes everything. But in doing so, it also empowers correction. Correction without self-hatred is one of the great advantages of detachment. You can acknowledge failure without collapsing. You can adjust without shame. Shame is attachment to ego. Detachment replaces shame with evaluation. What worked, what did not, what must change. This evaluation is cold but not cruel. It is precise. It treats performance as performance, not as identity. This separation allows improvement without emotional injury. Many people sabotage themselves because they confuse who they are with what they produce. Detachment ends this confusion. As responsibility deepens, so does confidence. Not the loud confidence of ego, but the quiet confidence of competence. You know you can face difficulty because you have faced it before. You know you can adapt because you have adapted before. This confidence is earned, not imagined. This earned confidence changes posture. You move differently. You speak differently. You no longer over-explain or justify. You do not need to convince. You act. Results accumulate slowly, then suddenly. People will misinterpret this as luck or talent. You remain indifferent. Detachment includes indifference to misinterpretation. Your concern is alignment with your own standards, not public narrative. Responsibility also demands restraint. Not every opportunity deserves your energy. Not every battle deserves engagement. Attachment chases everything that promises validation. Detachment selects ruthlessly. You conserve resources for what matters. This selection is based on values, not impulse. You say no often. You disappoint people. You decline distractions. This may appear harsh. It is necessary. Potential is finite. Energy is finite. Time is unforgiving. Detachment teaches you to spend them wisely. As you spend wisely, you gain leverage. Leverage is the multiplier of effort. It comes from focus, from depth, from sustained attention on fewer things done better. Attachment scatters. Detachment concentrates. Concentration is uncomfortable because it removes escape. You cannot jump between stimuli. You cannot numb yourself with novelty. You must sit with difficulty. This sitting builds capacity, the ability to remain present under strain. This capacity is rare. Most flee discomfort. Those who remain develop an edge, not because they are superior, but because they are willing to endure what others avoid. Detachment makes endurance possible by removing emotional amplification. Emotional amplification makes discomfort feel unbearable. Detachment reduces discomfort to sensation. Sensation can be tolerated, drama cannot. This distinction matters. When you operate from responsibility and detachment, your relationship with time changes again. You think in years, not days. You invest without immediate return. You accept delay as part of the process. This long view creates calm urgency. You move steadily without panic. Calm urgency is the ideal state for high performance. You are serious but not frantic, committed but not desperate, focused but not rigid. Detachment stabilizes this state. You will notice that setbacks no longer derail you. Detachment from self-image is the most unsettling form of detachment because it dismantles the last illusion of control. Most people believe they are protecting truth when they protect their image. In reality, they are protecting familiarity. The story of who they think they are becomes a cage. Every action is filtered through the question, will this confirm or threaten my identity? Potential suffocates inside that cage. The Stoics understood this danger deeply. They warned against becoming attached not only to possessions and outcomes, but to reputation and internal narratives. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that praise and blame are sounds made by mouths. Seneca mocked the idea that the crowd could define worth. Epictetus stripped identity down to choice alone. Detachment from self-image is the moment you stop asking who am I supposed to be and start asking what must be done now. This detachment feels like ego death because in a sense it is. The constructed self built from past achievements, failures, labels and expectations dissolves. What remains is uncomfortable simplicity. You are a thinking being capable of choice in each moment. No more, no less. This simplicity is terrifying to those addicted to narrative, but it is liberating to those seeking mastery. Self-image attachment creates inconsistency. You behave differently depending on who is watching. You avoid tasks that threaten your identity. You cling to roles that no longer serve growth. Detachment removes this distortion. You act according to reality, not according to performance of self. This is why truly detached individuals often appear unpredictable. They are not bound by past versions of themselves. They can change course without apology. They can abandon methods without nostalgia. They can evolve without identity crisis. This flexibility is not instability, it is freedom. When you detach from self-image, learning accelerates dramatically. You are no longer defending your competence. You are no longer afraid of appearing ignorant. You ask better questions. You experiment openly. You fail without humiliation. Humiliation requires an audience and an identity to be humiliated. Detachment removes both. Failure becomes a tool rather than a threat. You analyze it cleanly, you extract data, you move on. This rapid feedback loop compounds skill faster than any motivational strategy ever could. Most people do not realize how much energy they spend maintaining a self-concept. They curate behavior to remain consistent with a story. This maintenance drains cognitive resources. Detachment frees that energy. Suddenly you have more focus, more patience, more stamina. Not because you gain strength, but because you stopped wasting it. This also alters how you experience success. Success no longer inflates you. It does not tempt you into complacency. It does not demand that you defend a higher status. You acknowledge success, then return to work. Attachment to success is just another form of fear. Fear of falling. Detachment dissolves it. Without self-image attachment, you can take on roles temporarily. Leader, student, beginner, expert. You inhabit them fully, then release them. You are not confused when the role ends. You are not threatened when it changes. This adaptability is critical in a world that shifts constantly. The detached mind is not offended by change. It expects it. It is not shocked by loss. It has already accepted impermanence. This acceptance does not dull ambition. It sharpens it. You know time is limited. You know nothing is guaranteed. You act accordingly. As self-image dissolves, responsibility intensifies further. There is no one to impress, no persona to maintain, only standards to meet. These standards become internal law. You judge yourself by effort, quality, and integrity, not by applause or comparison. Comparison loses power here. When identity is detached from status, comparison becomes irrelevant. Others are no longer rivals or benchmarks. They are data points, teachers, obstacles, allies. You observe without envy. You learn without resentment. This emotional neutrality creates strategic clarity. You can admire without imitation. You can critique without hostility. You can compete without hatred. These are advanced psychological states unavailable to the attached mind. The attached mind must always protect its story. It reacts violently to contradiction. It resists evidence that threatens its self-view. Detachment welcomes contradiction. It uses it to refine understanding. Truth matters more than comfort. This is why detachment is intellectually dangerous. It does not allow cherished beliefs to remain unexamined. It subjects everything to reason. including the beliefs that once defined you. Many cannot endure this examination. They retreat into ideology or identity. You move forward into clarity. Clarity is not pleasant. It is stark. It removes excuses. It removes illusions of specialness. It leaves only work. This is why clarity is rare, but this rarity is precisely what makes it valuable. As you operate without self-image attachment, you may notice a strange calm when criticized. The words no longer stick. You assess whether there is truth. If there is, you adjust. If there is not, you discard it. Emotional reaction is optional. This composure unsettles others. It reveals how dependent they are on external validation. Validation addiction is one of the strongest forms of attachment. It turns life into a performance. Detachment ends the performance. You become private, even in public. Your real work happens internally, quietly, relentlessly. This privacy protects focus. It also protects intention. You do not broadcast plans. You do not seek encourage. Silence becomes a strategic advantage. With self-image gone, ambition becomes purer. You want to improve because improvement itself is meaningful. You want to master because mastery is honorable, not because it proves something about who you are, but because it expresses what you choose to do. This shift is subtle but transformative. It removes anxiety from ambition. Anxiety comes from fear of what failure says about you. When there is no story to protect, failure loses its sting. As detachment deepens further, you begin to see the final illusion, the belief that you are a fixed entity moving through life. In truth, you are a process, a sequence of choices, habits, corrections. There is no static self to defend, only a direction to maintain. This realization brings humility. You are not finished. You are never finished. This humility keeps you open. It keeps you learning. It keeps you grounded. Grounded ambition is rare. Most ambition is fueled by insecurity. Grounded ambition is fueled by duty. Duty to develop what you have been given. Duty to use reason well. Duty to live deliberately. This sense of duty anchors detachment. It prevents drift. It prevents apathy. It gives detachment purpose. Without duty, detachment would slide into indifference. With duty, it becomes discipline. Discipline at this level is quiet. It does not require force. It feels inevitable. You wake up and do what aligns. Not because you must, but because deviation feels unnatural. His is the state most people misinterpret as talent or obsession. In reality, it is alignment. When attachment falls away, resistance falls away with it. Action flows. Flow is not mystical. It is the absence of internal friction. Detachment removes that friction. Self-image creates it. As you move through life in this state, you will notice that potential expresses itself naturally. You are no longer chasing it. You are no longer trying to unlock it. You are simply removing what blocks it. What blocks it is attachment. Attachment to comfort. Attachment to approval. Attachment to narrative. Attachment to fear. You have removed much, but not all. The final layers of detachment are the most severe. Detachment from control itself. Detachment from the need to know how things will unfold. Detachment from control is where the mind finally stops resisting reality. This is the stage where most people retreat because it feels like surrender. But it is not surrender. It is alignment with how the world actually works. Control is the greatest illusion humans cling to. We plan obsessively not to act better, but to feel safer. We micromanage outcomes to soothe anxiety. Detachment exposes this impulse and strips it away. The Stoics were ruthless about this truth. Epictetus divided the world into what depends on us and what does not. Not as a thought exercise, but as a survival strategy. When you try to control what is not yours to command, you generate constant tension. That tension drains energy. Detachment releases it. This does not mean abandoning planning or foresight. It means planning without emotional dependence. You prepare thoroughly, then let go. You act decisively, then accept whatever follows. This acceptance is not resignation, it is readiness. You are prepared to respond, not to demand. When you detach from control, you stop fighting uncertainty. Uncertainty becomes normal rather than threatening. This changes everything. The unknown no longer paralyzes you, it sharpens you. You remain alert, observant, adaptive. Most people crave certainty because certainty promises emotional relief. They want guarantees that effort will pay off, that sacrifice will be rewarded, that pain will make sense. Detachment removes this bargaining. You act without needing meaning assigned in advance. Meaning emerges from integrity of action, not from predicted outcome. This frees enormous mental bandwidth. You are no longer running simulations of every possible future. You are no longer catastrophizing. You are no longer rehearsing disappointment. You deal with reality as it arrives, one moment at a time. This simplicity is powerful. Power here does not look dramatic. It looks like composure under volatility, like decision-making without panic, like steady progress through chaos. Others sense this steadiness and mistake it for confidence. In truth, it is acceptance. Acceptance is not passive. It is active clarity. You see what is. You adjust what you can. You endure what you must. You do not waste energy resisting facts. This efficiency compounds. When you detach from control, you also detach from the illusion of fairness. You stop expecting the world to reward effort proportionally or punish wrongdoing consistently. This expectation is a source of constant frustration. Reality is uneven. Accepting this does not make you cynical. It makes you effective. Effectiveness requires dealing with the world as it is, not as it should be. Attachment to fairness blinds people. They become outraged instead of strategic. They vent instead of adapt. Detachment restores pragmatism. Marcus Aurelius wrote about meeting events with a mind prepared for any outcome. This preparedness is emotional, not logistical. It means you are internally ready for success, failure, delay, or loss. Nothing shocks you. Shock is what breaks people. When you are not shocked, you can respond proportionally. You can take advantage of opportunity without overcommitting. You can absorb loss without collapse. You can pivot without despair. This flexibility is the hallmark of resilient systems. Detachment turns the mind into such a system. Control obsession creates rigidity. Rigid systems break under stress. Detached systems bend. They adapt. They survive. They grow. This is why detachment is strategic. It increases optionality. You are not locked into a single outcome. You can change course without ego injury. You can abandon sunk costs without grief. You can move when conditions shift. Most people cling to sunk costs because attachment tells them to justify past effort. Detachment allows you to cut losses cleanly. Past effort is gone. Present choice remains. This realism saves years. The fear of letting go of control often hides a deeper fear, the fear of being responsible without guarantees. When you let go of control, you accept that outcomes may be unfavorable despite correct action. This is difficult, but it is also liberating because you are no longer morally bound to success, only to effort and intention. This moral reframing is crucial. It prevents bitterness. When people believe good effort must result in good outcome, they become resentful when it does not. Detachment dissolves this entitlement. You do what is right because it is right, not because it guarantees reward. This stance builds character. Character outlasts circumstance. It also builds reputation quietly. People trust those who act consistently regardless of outcome. Trust is leverage. As detachment from control deepens, patience becomes effortless. You no longer rush to force outcomes. You allow processes to unfold. You intervene only when intervention is effective. This restraint prevents overcorrection. Overcorrection is a common failure mode of attachment. When results lag, people panic and change too much too fast. Detachment allows steady adjustment rather than frantic overhaul. This steadiness preserves progress. You begin to understand that not everything requires action. Some things require endurance. Others require waiting. Others require letting go entirely. Attachment cannot distinguish between these. It treats all discomfort as a call to act. Detachment discerns. This discernment is a form of wisdom. Wisdom is not knowledge. It is knowing when and how to apply knowledge. Detachment creates the calm necessary for this judgment. As you relinquish control, you may experience moments of anxiety. The mind rebels. It asks, what if things go wrong? This is natural. You do not argue with the mind, you observe it. You remind yourself that you have faced uncertainty before and survived. This builds trust in your own resilience. Resilience is not optimism, it is confidence in your capacity to respond. Detachment cultivates this confidence by repeatedly exposing you to uncertainty without collapse. Each exposure strengthens you. Eventually you stop fearing loss as much, not because loss stops hurting, but because you know it will not destroy you. This knowledge changes risk calculus. You can pursue bolder goals. You can step into arenas with higher variance. This is where potential expands. High potential requires tolerance for uncertainty. Low tolerance leads to conservative choices. Conservative choices limit growth. Detachment increases tolerance. It expands the field of action. You also become less reactive to others' attempts to control you. Guilt pressure, praise threats. These lose potency. You assess requests rationally. You choose based on values, not emotional hooks. This autonomy is rare. As autonomy strengthens, you may feel a growing distance from conventional measures of success. You are less impressed by status, less seduced by image, more interested in depth and durability. This shift reorients ambition towards substance. Substance is built slowly. It is not flashy. It does not announce itself. Detachment is comfortable with this. It understands that real power accumulates quietly. The final realization at this stage is stark. You cannot control outcomes. You cannot control others. You cannot control time. You can only control your response and your preparation. This is enough. Enough does not mean limited. It means sufficient. From this limited domain, you can create extraordinary results if you work intelligently and persistently. This acceptance removes anxiety at the root. Anxiety is the mind attempting to control the uncontrollable. When that attempt ends, anxiety loses fuel. What remains is focus, calm, readiness. You are now approaching the deepest application of detachment. Detachment not only from control but from comfort itself. Detachment from comfort is where the last layer of resistance exposes itself. Comfort is not just physical ease, it is psychological safety, familiar routines, predictable identities, emotional cushions that soften reality. Most people believe comfort is harmless. They believe it is something to earn after effort. In truth, comfort is the most subtle limiter of potency, because it teaches the mind to avoid necessary strain. The Stoics did not glorify suffering, but they were deeply suspicious of comfort. Not because comfort is evil, but because attachment to it weakens the will. When you organize your life around avoiding discomfort, you begin to fear growth itself. Growth always demands friction. Detachment from comfort restores your willingness to enter that friction voluntarily. Marcus Aurelius slept on the ground at times, not to punish himself, but to remind his mind that it could endure less. Seneca practiced poverty, while wealthy, not out of guilt, but to break the spell of dependency. Epictetus owned almost nothing because he understood that fear of loss begins where attachment begins. These were not rituals, they were psychological training. Comfort creates expectations. Expectations create entitlement. Entitlement creates fragility. Detachment dissolves this chain. When you expect little, you are rarely destabilized. When you can function under austere conditions, you become dangerous in competitive environments. You are not slowed by inconvenience. You are not derailed by lack of ideal conditions. Most people delay action waiting for comfort. They want the right time, the right mood, the right resources, the right support. This waiting is attachment disguised as prudence. Detachment ends the waiting. You act in imperfect conditions. You build momentum while others prepare excuses. This is where the gap widens dramatically. Not because you are smarter or stronger, but because you are willing to move without reassurance. Reassurance is a luxury. Progress does not require it. As you detach from comfort, you stop negotiating with yourself. You no longer ask, "Do I feel like it?" You ask, "Is this necessary?" This shift is profound. Feeling is volatile. Necessity is stable. When necessity governs action, consistency follows. Consistency is the true engine of potential, not intensity, not inspiration. Consistency. Detachment from comfort makes consistency possible because it removes the need for pleasant conditions. You work when it is boring. You train when it is tedious. You think when it is uncomfortable. This is where most fall away. The mind attached to comfort dramatizes discomfort. It labels effort as suffering. It magnifies fatigue. It seeks escape. Detachment reduces discomfort to sensation. Sensation can be endured. Drama cannot. This endurance builds a deep confidence, not confidence that things will be easy, but confidence that you can continue even when they are not. This confidence is unshakable because it is grounded in experience, not hope. As comfort loses its grip, you may notice a strange inversion. Hard things begin to feel satisfying, not because they are pleasant, but because they align with your values. Easy things begin to feel empty. This is not asceticism, it is alignment. Alignment creates energy. When your actions match your principles, effort feels lighter even when it is heavy. Removes internal resistance. So external resistance becomes manageable. You will also notice how much of society is organized around comfort maintenance, distraction, consumption, convenience. These are not neutral, they train avoidance. Detachment makes you immune to much of this pull. You can use comfort without being used by it. This immunity gives you time. Time is the rarest resource. When you are not constantly soothing yourself, you reclaim hours. Hours of focused work, hours of deliberate rest, hours of reflection. This reclaimed time compounds quietly. Detachment from comfort also changes how you rest. Rest becomes strategic, not escapist. You rest to recover capacity, not to avoid life. You do not numb yourself, you restore yourself. This distinction preserves energy. As you become comfortable with discomfort, you also become honest with yourself. There is no need to lie about effort, no need to inflate struggle. You know what you can endure. You know where your edge is. This honesty sharpens training. Training becomes precise. You push where growth is possible. You recover where needed. You do not indulge. You do not punish. You calibrate. This calibration is rare and powerful. Others may not understand this posture. They will call you extreme, unbalanced, obsessed. In reality, you are simply detached from the need to feel good all the time. You have chosen meaning over comfort. Meaning is heavier than pleasure, but it lasts longer. Detachment allows you to carry the weight without complaint. Complaint is attachment to ease. As this layer integrates, you reach a state few experience. You are not seeking hardship, but you are no longer avoiding it. You are neutral, available, ready. This readiness is intimidating to those who rely on comfort for stability. Stability built on comfort collapses when comfort disappears. Stability built on detachment endures. This endurance is the final competitive advantage. At this point, detachment is complete. You are detached from outcome, identity control, and comfort. What remains is pure agency, the ability to choose well regardless of conditions. This is the state from which full potential expresses itself naturally, not as a burst, as a steady force. You are no longer chasing potential. You are no longer asking how to unlock it. You have removed what blocks it. Now only one thing remains: what you will do with this understanding. Because knowledge without action is indulgence, and detachment without commitment is avoidance. Now the illusion is gone. There is nothing left to hide behind, no outcome to cling to, no image to protect, no control to demand, no comfort to anesthetize you. What remains is stark and unforgiving and powerful. Choice, pure choice, moment after moment. This is where most people turn back because there is no one to blame here. No narrative to soften the weight, no philosophy to quote instead of act. Only the question of whether you will live deliberately or drift back into Attachment the moment pressure returns. This is the moment Marcus Aurelius was preparing himself for every morning, not battlefields or politics or death, but this exact internal reckoning. Will I govern my mind today, or will I surrender it to impulse, distraction, and fear? Will I act according to reason or according to comfort? Will I accept reality as it is and shape my response, or will I demand it bend to my preferences? This is the daily confrontation. Everything else is secondary. Full potential is not a destination you reach. It is a standard you uphold. It is not unlocked once. It is defended repeatedly. Every day attachment tries to return wearing a different mask. It will tell you that you deserve ease now, that you have done enough, that you need validation, that you need certainty, that you need to feel ready. Detachment is not the absence of these voices, it is the refusal to obey them. There will be days when discipline feels heavy, days when effort feels thankless, days when results do not appear. This is where detachment proves its worth. You do not ask what you are getting, you ask what you are becoming. You do not ask when it will pay off, you ask whether you are acting in accordance with your standards. This question never fails you. Epictetus did not promise peace through avoidance. He promised freedom through mastery, freedom from being pulled apart by desire and fear, freedom from being ruled by externals, freedom from living reactively. This freedom is not comfortable. It is demanding. It requires vigilance. But it gives something comfort never will. Sovereignty. Sovereignty over your attention, sovereignty over your effort, sovereignty over your response. This sovereignty is quiet. No one applauds it. No one hands it to you. It is taken through consistent refusal to abandon yourself. You will notice that life does not suddenly become easier. It becomes cleaner. Problems remain, but confusion fades. Pain remains, but resentment dissolves. Effort remains, but resistance falls away. This cleanliness allows power to flow. Power here is not domination. It is alignment. Alignment between thought and action, between values and behavior, between intention and execution. When this alignment holds, there is no wasted movement, no internal sabotage, no fragmentation. This is why detached individuals seem relentless. They are not fueled by emotion, they are fueled by commitment. Emotion fluctuates, commitment endures. You must understand this clearly. No one will force you to live this way. Society rewards attachment. It rewards reaction. It rewards noise. Detachment will often look invisible. You will not be celebrated for restraint. You will not be rewarded immediately for discipline. This is the price, and it is non-negotiable. But so is the reward. The reward is not applause. It is capability. The ability to stand in uncertainty without collapse. The ability to act under pressure without distortion. The ability to pursue long, difficult paths without needing constant reassurance. This capability compounds into influence, respect, and results over time. You already know what attachment costs you. You have felt it, the hesitation, the overthinking, the emotional exhaustion, the cycles of motivation and collapse. You know where that path leads. More noise, more distraction, more regret disguised as comfort. Detachment offers no comfort, it offers clarity. And clarity demands action. So this is where the philosophy ends and the standard begins. Not tomorrow, not when conditions improve, not when you feel ready. Now, choose one area of your life where attachment has weakened you, where you wait for outcomes, where you crave validation, where you protect comfort and withdraw your emotional dependence completely. Act there without expectation, work there without bargaining, persist there without reassurance. Do not announce it, do not dramatize it, do not seek encouragement, execute quietly, adjust rationally, endure patiently, then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, until detachment is no longer something you practice but something you embody. This is not about becoming cold, it is about becoming unshakable. This is not about rejecting ambition, it is about purifying it. This is not about withdrawing from life, it is about engaging with it at full capacity without being owned by it. You are capable of far more than your emotions suggest. far more than your fears permit, far more than your comfort allows. Detach, act, endure, refine, and do not stop.